The champagne glass slips from my fingers before I can stop it, shattering against the polished marble floor of Willow Creek's most exclusive restaurant. Every head in the private dining room turns toward me, conversations halting mid-sentence. I can't breathe, can't move, can't process what my mother just announced with that eerily pleasant smile on her face. "We've decided to transfer your trust fund to Savannah," Mom repeats, her voice carrying through the silence. "She needs it more than you do right now. $52,000. My money. The trust my grandmother established for me. The foundation of our wedding plans and our future home. Gone. Just like that." Carter's warm hand finds mine under the table, steadying me as the room begins to spin. What should have been the happiest night of our lives, our engagement celebration after 5 years together, has transformed into something unrecognizable. Something cruel. "You can't do that." I finally manage, my voice so quiet I barely hear it myself. "Legally, that money is mine." I pronounce each word loud and clear. Mom's smile tightens. "Oh, Madeline, always so concerned with technicalities." The memory of Grandma's last conversation with me floods back unbidden. Her frail hand clasping mine in the hospital room, her eyes clear despite the pain medication. "This money is for your future, Maddie. Use it wisely for education and then whatever brings you joy." I had honored that promise. Used just enough to finish college with minimal debt. Saved the rest, planned carefully, budgeted down to the penny for a modest wedding and a down payment on our first home together. Unlike Savannah, who blew through her identical inheritance in 18 months, a failed gluten-free bakery, a luxury SUV that she crashed 6 months later, weekend trips to New York and Miami with friends who disappeared when her funds ran dry. I've already allocated that money, I say, forcing strength into my voice. Our venue deposit is due next week. We've been planning this for months. You know that. Dad shifts uncomfortably in his chair but says nothing. Never says anything when Mom gets like this. Plans change. Mom responds with a dismissive wave. Savannah's starting a new business venture. She needs capital. Another business? After the bakery? And the podcast network? And the skincare line? I ask, aware of our friends and family watching this unfold like a car crash in slow motion. This is my money, not yours to redistribute. Now I even raise my voice more determined. Mom's face hardens. That familiar transformation from sugar-sweet to stone happening in an instant. "You've always been selfish. Savannah needs this more than you do." Needing something doesn't entitle her to take what isn't hers, I counter, surprised by my own steadiness. The crack of Mom's palm against my cheek echoes through the private dining room. The sting spreads across my skin as gasps ripple through our guests. Carter half rises beside me, his body tense. Across the table, Savannah examines her manicure, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. For the first time, I notice the waiter by the door discreetly speaking into a phone, his eyes darting between my mother and me. My hands have been trembling since Mom's announcement, but now they still. Something solidifies inside me as I look directly into my mother's eyes, really see her, perhaps for the first time in years. "This is how it's always been," I say quietly. "Savannah makes poor choices, and I'm expected to sacrifice to fix them." The room divides before my eyes. Some guests suddenly find their water glasses fascinating, unable to look at me. Others move closer, Aunt Rachel reaching for my shoulder. Carter's parents exchanging alarmed glances, my college roommate Kate pulling out her phone with purpose. Carter stands fully now, his hand at the small of my back. "Mr. and Mrs. Grant," he says, his voice gentle but firm, "I think it would be best if you left." "This is family business," Mom snaps. "Stay out of it." "I am family," Carter responds. "Or I will be, very soon. And I won't stand by while you assault my fiancé." The truth settles over me with surprising clarity. This isn't just about the money. It's about a lifetime of this pattern, Savannah's needs always prioritized over mine, her failures rewarded while my responsibility is taken for granted. If I back down now, nothing will ever change. I reach for Carter's hand, drawing strength from his unwavering support, my real family. The wedding we've planned, the home we've dreamed of, they're both at risk now. But something else is at stake too, my self-respect and the kind of life I want to build moving forward. And for once, I'm choosing myself. 2 days later, the police report trembles in my hands. Carter sits beside me on our apartment sofa, his warmth a sharp contrast to the cold reality spread across my lap. He places a glass of water on the coffee table, but my fingers are too unsteady to reach for it. 3 prior incidents. I whisper, scanning the neatly typed documentation. 3 times she's done this before. The report details Joanne Grant's physical expressions of emotional distress at a charity fundraiser in 2019, a family reunion in 2021, and most recently, at my cousin's wedding last summer. Each time, witnesses described a slap, followed by family members quickly explaining it away as just how she shows emotion. Carter's arm tightens around my shoulders. Keep reading. The next page knocks the air from my lungs. An email thread between my parents, dated 4 months ago, long before our engagement announcement. Mom's words glare up at me. We've already promised Savannah she can use Madeline's trust money. She needs it to launch her wellness coaching business. I sit heavily against the cushions, the pieces clicking into horrible place. My sister, who blew through her identical $52,000 inheritance in 18 months on a failed gluten-free bakery, an SUV she totaled driving home from a vineyard tour, and weekend getaways with friends who vanished when her bank account emptied, was promised my money months ago. This was never about education restrictions. I say, my voice steadier than I expected. This was about maintaining the pattern. Savannah fails, I pay the price. Carter takes the documents, carefully placing them on the coffee table. You don't have to decide anything tonight. But I already have. I will fight my family till the very end, and I need to prepare. The courthouse feels cavernous the following Tuesday. Judge Harmon presides from her bench, peering down through rectangular glasses at my mother, who sits ramrod straight in a pale pink Chanel suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dad hovers behind her like a nervous shadow, his hand occasionally touching her shoulder in silent support. I smooth the wrinkles from my simple gray blazer, feeling underdressed and overexposed. Mrs. Grant. The judge begins, reviewing the report. This appears to be a pattern of behavior. Mom's chin lifts. I was emotional. My daughter had just announced her engagement after keeping it secret for weeks. The prosecutor, a woman with steel gray hair and unwavering focus, steps forward. Your Honor, we have statements from 12 witnesses who confirm the defendant struck her daughter with substantial force, causing visible redness and swelling to the victim's face. A court-appointed therapist testifies next, using phrases like displaced anger issues and inappropriate physical boundaries. Mom's face remains impassive, but her knuckles whiten around her leather handbag. The sentence comes down like a gentle hammer: 8 months probation, a $2,500 fine, and mandatory anger management sessions. Mom doesn't flinch, but Dad's shoulders slump slightly. My phone buzzes before we even leave the courtroom. Savannah's text burns on the screen. You've destroyed this family. Mom is devastated because of you. By evening, my phone lights up with calls from relatives. Aunt Rachel leaves a voicemail telling me how proud she is that I stood my ground. Uncle Jim's message drips with disappointment that I would air family laundry in public. Cousin Emily texts that Mom has always been high-strung and I should understand that. Great Aunt Patricia sends flowers with a card that simply reads, "About time someone stood up to her." The family fractures along ancient fault lines, with sides drawn according to who has felt the sting of Mom's palm themselves. The civil lawsuit arrives 3 days later, delivered by a courier who seems embarrassed to hand me the envelope. I'm being sued by my own parents for misappropriation of funds intended solely for education. Carter and I sit at our kitchen table that evening, our wedding binder open between us. The Willow Pond venue requires a non-refundable $5,000 deposit by Friday, money now frozen in legal limbo. We could use my savings. Carter offers, but we both know it isn't enough. It's not just the venue. My fingers trace the budget spreadsheet we'd carefully constructed. Dad spoke to your boss yesterday. Carter's face pales. How do you know? Karen from HR texted me. Dad's suggesting the company reconsider your promotion because of family loyalty issues. My chest tightens, the familiar pressure of anxiety building behind my ribs. For the first time, I wonder if the money is worth the scorched earth spreading around us. My phone pings with a Facebook notification. Savannah has posted a family photo from last Christmas, captioning it, "Some people forget where they came from and who supported them through everything. Family isn't disposable when something shinier comes along." The comment section fills with sympathetic responses from relatives and hometown friends who've only heard one version of the story. Our wedding planning calendar stares accusingly from the refrigerator. its milestone dates now impossible to meet as funds divert to legal defense. The doorbell rings the next morning. A slim woman with a sharp bob and sharper eyes stands in the hallway, a leather briefcase tucked under one arm. "Alexis Ward," she says, extending her hand. "I specialize in trust law and family financial disputes. Your Uncle Tom asked me to stop by." She reviews the trust documentation for less than 10 minutes before looking up with the first smile I've seen in days. "This is straightforward. I'm filing for immediate dismissal," she says, tapping the papers with a manicured fingernail. "The language here is crystal clear. Your grandmother established this money for your education and future needs, at your discretion. There are no restrictions that limit it to education only." As Alexis outlines our counterattack, I find myself wondering, is fighting for what's legally mine worth losing my family over? The money represented security for our future, but at what cost to my present peace? Would you stand your ground even if it meant potentially severing family ties forever, or find a compromise to keep the peace? The next day, while I am still preparing the plan for the attack, the calls start at 7 in the morning the next day and don't stop until after 10 at night. Aunt Patricia, my mother's older sister, leaves 3 voicemails about honoring thy parents. Cousin Rachel texts that I'm being dramatic. Even my father's college roommate, a man I've met twice, emails to express his disappointment in my choices. It's a full-scale intervention. I tell Carter, scrolling through the 17 notifications on my phone, orchestrated by my mother, of course. Carter looks up from his coffee, dark circles under his eyes matching mine. "Block them all," he suggests, not for the first time. "You don't owe them explanations." Before I can answer, my phone buzzes with a text from Savannah. I open it, then nearly drop the device. "She's engaged," I whisper, staring at the photo of a massive diamond ring on her finger. The caption reads, "Wedding set for the 18th of June at the Grand Crescent Hotel. Save the date." The 18th of June? Carter moves beside me to look. That's the week before our date. I laugh, but it sounds hollow even to my ears. What a coincidence. The local paper arrives later that morning with the headline, "Family Division Rocks Willow Creek." My mother's quote takes center stage. "All we want is for our daughter to understand that family supports each other. Savannah's new business needs this investment more than Madeline needs an extravagant wedding." My father adds, "We raised her better than this." Not a single attempt to contact me for comment. Carter's phone rings while we're still processing the article. His face tightens as he answers, moving to the bedroom. When he returns 15 minutes later, his expression tells me everything. "My boss wants to meet tomorrow, about loyalty concerns within the company." He runs a hand through his hair. "Your father called him." The doorbell rings. I open it to find Pastor Williams, his Bible tucked under one arm. The man who baptized me, confirmed me, and counseled me through my teenage years now stands on my doorstep with disappointment etched across his face. "Madeline," he says with practiced gentleness, "your mother is heartbroken. That unfortunate incident at dinner was simply motherly correction. The Bible teaches us to honor our parents in all things." I grip the doorframe. Does it teach parents to steal from their children? His expression hardens. "Pride goes before destruction, young lady." I close the door. The first wedding vendor cancellation email arrives that afternoon. The florist regrets to inform me they're overbooked for our date. By evening, the photographer and DJ have followed suit. Each citing different reasons, all suddenly unavailable. They're calling them. I whisper to Carter as we sit in the darkening apartment, telling them we've canceled. Sleep abandons me that night. I stare at the ceiling, counting the hours as they pass. When Carter's alarm goes off at 6, I've been awake since 3, my stomach a tight knot. I've lost 8 pounds in 10 days. The mirror shows a woman I barely recognize, cheekbones too sharp, eyes too hollow. "You need to eat something," Carter says, watching me pick at my toast. I'm not hungry. His parents called yesterday, suggesting we postpone the wedding until things settle down. Their voices held worry, but also uncertainty, the first crack in their unwavering support. When my credit card is declined at the grocery store, I call the bank immediately. "Miss Grant, there's been a significant change to your credit score," the representative explains. "Someone attempted to open 3 credit cards in your name last week. We flagged it as potential fraud." That evening, I try to access our shared wedding planning folder, all our carefully curated ideas, vendor contacts, budget spreadsheets, only to find it completely empty. Every file deleted. They've hacked our account, Carter says, trying unsuccessfully to recover the data. How did they even get access? I sink onto the couch. My mother knows all my security questions. Childhood pet, first school, favorite teacher. Can they really get away with all this? Carter asks, sitting beside me. The question hangs in the air unanswered. In the silence of our apartment, the reality settles around us like dust. The systematic dismantling of our wedding plans, the isolation tactics, the financial sabotage. The doorbell rings again the next morning. I peer through the peephole, half expecting another family member or pastor. Instead, Uncle Tom, my father's younger brother, stands there, shuffling his feet. I open the door cautiously. Uncle Tom. He looks tired, uncomfortable in his suit and tie. Without preamble, he holds out an envelope. It's not much, but it should help with the legal expenses. I take it, confused. I don't understand. Not everyone in this family has lost their moral compass, Maddie. His voice catches. I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle. Tears spring to my eyes as I invite him in. 3 days later, I stand in the courthouse hallway during a recess in our civil trial. Carter has gone to find coffee when my parents and Savannah approach, cornering me against the wall. This has gone far enough, Dad says, his voice low. Drop this nonsense lawsuit and we can all be a family again. Your mother is willing to forgive you. I stare at him, noting how he defers to her even now. Forgive me? For what exactly? For causing all this trouble, Savannah interjects, her new ring catching the fluorescent light. For being selfish. There's nothing to forgive me for, I say, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I'm just asking for what's legally mine. Mom steps closer, her perfume overwhelming in the narrow hallway. If you continue this, you'll never be welcome in our home again. Something shifts inside me, a weight lifting rather than settling. I stand straighter, looking directly into her eyes. That sounds like peace to me, not a punishment. My mother's face contorts with shock. She expected tears, pleading, maybe even surrender. Not this calm clarity. The realization washes over me like cool water. Their love was always conditional on my sacrifice. The relationship they're threatening to withhold isn't one worth saving. I walk away without looking back, feeling lighter with each step. That evening, I find Carter updating our wedding website. A simple statement appears on the homepage. Due to circumstances beyond our control, our wedding plans are evolving, but one thing remains certain: love prevails. My phone chimes with a text from Kate, my college roommate. Emergency wedding shower this Saturday. No excuses. When I arrive at her apartment that weekend, 20 friends greet me with champagne and packages wrapped in silver paper. Replacement gifts, Kate explains, for the ones your family returned. Across the room, Alexis, our attorney, catches my eye and raises her glass. I'm working overtime, she mouths, then holds up a folder. Found some interesting patterns in your family's financial records. As the afternoon unfolds with laughter and support, the contrast becomes crystal clear. While my family tries their hardest to isolate me, my chosen family gathers closer. The night before the verdict, Alexis calls with an update. I've prepared all of Savannah's spending records for cross-examination, she says, her voice confident. And I did some research on Judge Henderson. She has a history of ruling against parental financial manipulation, 3 cases in the last year alone. The next morning, Carter and I enter the courtroom together. Through the gathering crowd, I spot Savannah in the front row, frantically texting, her face flushed with panic. She looks up, catches my eye, and for a moment, genuine fear flashes across her features. I squeeze Carter's hand as we take our seats. Whatever happens next, I'm ready to protect what we have and what is mine. The courthouse air feels thick with tension as I smooth my simple navy dress and take my seat at the plaintiff's table. Carter's hand finds mine, his thumb tracing small circles against my palm, a silent promise that whatever happens today, we face it together. Alexis strides to the front of the courtroom, her burgundy blazer a splash of determination against the muted wood paneling. She begins methodically displaying documents on the large screen facing Judge Harrison, her voice clear and unwavering. Your Honor, the trust documents establish no restrictions beyond educational expenses, which Miss Grant has already satisfied. Alexis clicks to the next slide. These bank records demonstrate Miss Grant's responsible financial management over 7 years. The judge leans forward, studying the screen. I sit taller, willing myself to project confidence despite the flutter in my stomach. Compare this, Alexis continues, with Savannah Grant's identical trust fund, depleted within 18 months on non-educational expenses. She clicks again, and a transaction record appears. My breath catches as I recognize it. Additionally, Your Honor, 3 years ago, Miss Grant loaned her sister $3,000 from her own trust fund to cover rent after another financial crisis. This loan remains unpaid. Murmurs ripple through the courtroom. I hadn't told anyone about that loan except Carter. Alexis must have found it in my bank records. There are 3 similar cases in this circuit. Alexis notes, where adult children's trusts were protected from parental interference after the beneficiary reached maturity. Judge Harrison removes her glasses, pinning my parents with a sharp gaze. Why did you wait until your daughter's engagement to suddenly claim these educational restrictions? My father shifts uncomfortably. My mother's spine stiffens. When Savannah takes the stand, she wears the wounded expression, I've seen her perfect since childhood. Her voice wavers dramatically as she speaks. Madeline always got everything. She was Grandma's favorite. Her lower lip trembles. Mom and Dad promised me that money because they knew I needed help starting over. Alexis approaches for cross-examination, her steps measured and unhurried. Miss Grant, you received an identical trust fund from your grandparents, correct? Yes, but... And you spent that money on a bakery venture, a luxury SUV, and various personal expenses? Savannah glances at our parents. That's different. Different how? Alexis asks, her tone conversational. If these trusts were strictly for college education, why were you allowed to use yours on a bakery and a luxury vehicle without any objection from your parents? Color rises in Savannah's cheeks. Because I needed it more than she did. The words burst from her. She always has everything together. Her perfect job, her perfect fiancé, her perfect plans. She doesn't need help like I do. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Judge Harrison bangs her gavel once. So this isn't about educational restrictions at all, Alexis says quietly. This is about punishing your sister for being responsible with her money. Objection. My mother stands suddenly. This is outrageous. My daughter is being twisted. Mrs. Grant, the judge interrupts. You are not counsel in this case. Sit down or I will hold you in contempt. As my mother sinks back into her seat, I notice the court reporter watching with wide eyes. This family drama has become public record now, the truth laid bare in black and white. When the judge asks if I would consider a settlement that splits the remaining funds with Savannah, I pause. Would compromising bring peace to our family, or would it just teach them that pressure and manipulation eventually work? Carter takes the stand next, his voice steady as he describes our careful financial planning and our modest wedding budget. We've been saving for 3 years, he explains. The venue requires half the payment up front. We've chosen vendors carefully to stay within our means. Uncle Tom follows, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light. My parents, Madeline's grandparents, established identical trusts for both granddaughters. They spoke often about wanting the girls to have financial security as they started their adult lives. There were never conditions beyond helping with college. When our wedding planner testifies about the mysterious cancellations and harassment of our vendors, Judge Harrison's expression darkens. Someone called every vendor on their list claiming the wedding was canceled. She confirms. I've never seen such deliberate sabotage in 15 years of planning weddings. Alexis stands for her closing argument, her voice resonating through the now silent courtroom. This case has never been about proper use of funds. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of emotional manipulation and control, using money as the weapon. Miss Grant has honored her grandparents' wishes by completing her education and saving the remainder for her future. The attempt to redistribute her inheritance came only when she asserted independence through her engagement. When Judge Harrison dismisses the case, affirming my full rights to the trust fund and ordering my parents to pay my legal fees, I feel something inside me unlock. Not triumph exactly, but vindication. The truth, finally acknowledged. Outside the courtroom, relatives who previously avoided my calls approach hesitantly. Aunt Rachel hugs me, whispering apologies for believing my mother's version of events. Cousin Mark admits he'd questioned the story but hadn't wanted to rock the boat. The local newspaper reporter who covered the hearing asks for a statement. I simply say, the court's findings speak for themselves. As my parents leave, my father pauses, looking back at me with an expression I can't quite read: regret, perhaps, or recognition. But then my mother tugs his arm, and he turns away. Later that afternoon, Uncle Tom calls with surprising news. Word around town is that Savannah's grand wedding plans are suddenly being scaled back dramatically. Seems the money tree has stopped bearing fruit. For the first time in months, I sleep through the night without waking to anxiety. The truth has a weight all its own, and finally, it's no longer mine alone to carry. 2 days after the courtroom confrontation, the doorbell rings at precisely 9 in the morning. Carter glances at me from over his coffee mug, his eyebrows lifting in silent question. We aren't expecting anyone. I'll get it, I say, setting down my own mug. When I open the door, my heart stutters. Mom and Dad stand on my welcome mat, Mom's face arranged in that particular smile she wears when she wants something. Dad shifts his weight from one foot to the other, eyes darting anywhere but my face. Madeline, darling, Mom says, her voice honey sweet. May we come in? We need to talk. Against my better judgment, I step aside. They enter my apartment, Mom's gaze sweeping over everything with barely concealed judgment. Carter? She acknowledges stiffly when she spots him. I'd prefer if Madeline and I could speak privately, mother to daughter. Carter looks to me, waiting. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Carter. I tell her, arms crossing over my chest. He's family now. Mom's smile tightens but doesn't disappear. Fine, we've come to offer reconciliation. Dad clears his throat. Several relatives are reconsidering attending Savannah's wedding. The family feels divided. It's unfortunate. What your father means, Mom interjects, is that we can put this ugliness behind us. We're still your parents, Madeline. Family should come before money. I wait, knowing there's more. But I am ready. Savannah needs just $10,000 for her wedding. Mom finally says, a small portion of what you've insisted on keeping. Surely you can spare that much for your sister. The implication hangs unspoken in the air. My own wedding will be boycotted unless I comply. Carter stands silently behind me, his presence steady as a mountain. I feel his support radiating like warmth against my back. I've been wondering when you'd try this. I say, my voice surprisingly calm. I walk to the desk in our living room and retrieve a folder. Before I answer, there's something you should see. I open the folder and lay out the first sheet of paper, a screenshot of an email. This is a cancellation email supposedly from me to our venue, except I never sent it. I place another paper beside it. This is the digital signature trace. It was sent from Savannah's laptop. Mom's face pales slightly. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm showing you evidence. I lay down more papers, documentation of harassing calls to our vendors, a credit fraud attempt report with Savannah's name highlighted. Your perfect daughter tried to destroy our wedding. When that didn't work, she attempted to ruin my credit score. Dad leans forward, his eyes widening as he scans the documents. What did Savannah do exactly? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Leon? Mom hisses, but for once he doesn't retreat. I pull out one final document, a contract with a private security firm. This is our wedding security detail. Every entrance will be monitored, every guest verified. I close the folder with a soft thud. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your attendance. And I certainly don't need to fund another of Savannah's extravagances. Mom's face hardens, but I notice something new in her eyes, the first flicker of uncertainty. You've always been dramatic. She attempts, but the words lack their usual conviction. The evidence speaks for itself, Carter says quietly. The police have copies of everything. Dad takes a small step away from Mom, something I've never seen before. Why would Savannah do these things? He asks, more to himself than to me. Mom grabs his arm. We're leaving. Clearly Madeline has made her choice. My choice becomes reality weeks later on a perfect spring morning. Our wedding venue, a simple but elegant garden with a stone pavilion, buzzes with activity. Guests mingle on the lawn, champagne flutes glinting in the sunlight. Security personnel in discreet black suits position themselves near every entrance. I'm adjusting my veil when a walkie-talkie crackles from the security guard stationed outside the bridal suite. We've got a situation at the service entrance. A voice reports. Subject identified as Savannah Grant attempting unauthorized entry with contraband. Black paint. Appears to be intended for damage. The security captain approaches me, tablet in hand. Ma'am, we've apprehended your sister. Surveillance footage shows her bribing one of the kitchen staff for access information earlier this week. He turns the tablet so I can see Savannah's face clearly, as she hands money to a young server. My heart pounds, but not with fear. Remove her from the property, I say with surprising steadiness. No charges. Are you certain? He asks. Absolutely. This is my wedding day. I won't let her take another minute of it. When the time comes, Uncle Tom stands proudly beside me at the garden entrance, his arm linked with mine. Ready, Maddie? He asks, his eyes crinkling with emotion. I scan the gathered guests, friends who stood by us, relatives who chose truth over loyalty, colleagues who never wavered. Not a large crowd, but every face reflects genuine happiness for us. More than ready, I answer. As we proceed down the aisle, Carter waits for me beneath an arch of white roses, his smile brighter than the sun overhead. My heart swells with certainty. During our vows, Carter takes my hands in his. You taught me what true strength looks like, he says, voice thick with emotion, not in winning battles but in choosing which ones matter. As we turn to face our guests as husband and wife, I catch a glimpse of movement at the garden's edge. My father stands alone, watching from a distance. Our eyes meet briefly before he turns and walks away, shoulders hunched. 2 days later, as we prepare to leave for our honeymoon, Kate calls with the latest gossip. Savannah's wedding at the Grand Crescent Hotel has been scaled down to almost nothing, she reports. They've moved from the grand ballroom to the garden room 4 times smaller, and at least 12 relatives have declined their invitations, all citing prior commitments. I feel a complicated mix of emotions that I can't quite name. When we return home a week later, a small package waits on our doorstep. No card, no note. Inside rests my grandmother's pearl and sapphire brooch, a family heirloom I'd always admired, but never expected to own. That evening, Carter's college roommate calls with more news. Joanne and Leon are taking out a second mortgage on their house. Apparently, even Savannah's scaled-back wedding remains extravagant beyond their means. I close my eyes, the brooch cool against my palm. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Others define who you become. Sunlight streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our condo, casting golden rectangles across the hardwood floor where Carter sits cross-legged, carefully repotting a fiddle-leaf fig. 6 months have passed since our wedding, and the peace that fills our Sunday mornings still feels like a revelation. Think she needs more drainage? Carter asks, looking up at me with soil-smudged fingers. I smile, setting down my coffee mug on our kitchen island. Probably. Remember what happened to the last one? Our home bursts with greenery, potted herbs on the kitchen windowsill, hanging plants cascading from macrame holders, a row of succulents marching along our bedroom shelf. Each one thriving, unlike the tense silence and emotional minefields that characterize Sunday mornings at my parents' house. Support group meeting tomorrow? Carter asks, tamping soil gently around the plant's base. I nod, mentally reviewing my notes for the Family Boundary Support Network I started 3 months ago. 10 people confirmed, 2 new attendees. The wedding photos on our mantel catch my eye. Carter and me surrounded by Uncle Tom, Carter's parents Alexis, and friends who stood by us during the crisis. A smaller circle than originally planned, but infinitely stronger. The mail slot clatters, and I retrieve an embossed envelope bearing my parents' return address. An invitation to Christmas dinner, the handwriting unmistakably my mother's. My hands remain steady as I read it. They want us for Christmas, I tell Carter, my voice even. Mom promises a fresh start, and Savannah will be bringing her new boyfriend. Carter watches me carefully. What do you want to do? 6 months ago, this invitation would have sent me spiraling into guilt and obligation. Now, I simply place it in the recycling bin. I'm thinking we should host our own dinner this year. I reply. Uncle Tom, your parents, Kate and Marcus, Alexis if she's not visiting her sister. Later that evening, as we finalize our holiday guest list, I feel none of the guilt or second-guessing that once plagued me. Instead, there's a quiet certainty that feels like coming home to myself. Uncle Tom arrives first on Christmas Day, bearing a bottle of champagne and wearing a ridiculous reindeer sweater. To boundaries that protect the heart, He toasts when our guests have assembled around our dining table, and courage that honors the truth. Glasses clink as winter light fades outside our windows, the room warm with conversation and genuine laughter. 3 months later, on our first anniversary, we host a small gathering. The same faces that supported us through the storm now celebrate with us in the calm that followed. "We have an announcement," Carter says, his arm around my waist as our friends fall silent. Madeline and I are establishing the New Roots Scholarship Fund for students who've been estranged from their families due to situations similar to what we experienced. Alexis raises her glass, her eyes bright. "To choosing your own family and writing your own story." 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrives. My parents' house is being sold, financial difficulties finally catching up with them after years of overextension. I spend an hour researching financial counseling services, then send the information to my father's email with no message attached. No money, just resources. It feels like closing a circle. That night, Carter finds me on our balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in lavender and gold. "Do you regret standing your ground?" he asks, joining me at the railing. "Not for a second," I answer truthfully. "Some bridges aren't meant to be repaired." Later, I make a final entry in the journal I've kept throughout this journey. We're discussing starting a family of our own next year. One built on honesty, respect, and the understanding that love should never require sacrifice of your self-worth. As I closed the chapter on my birth family, I wondered what others would have done in my place. Is family loyalty an obligation regardless of treatment, or is there wisdom in recognizing when some relationships bring more harm than healing? When do you think it's time to walk away from toxic family connections, and when should you keep trying?